Well, here's the next update on this first gen Dodge with the nv5600. I've got the transmission bolted up there. It's kind of a pain in the butt to get it on, but using that later model bell housing adapter, what I did to make sure this is all correct, and as you can see, I have a gear vendor on this truck. I had to make a new cross member. The original first gen Dodge one will not work on this truck because the transmission sits further back. The original one was up towards the front over here, but it actually sits back like 4.5 inches or so. I used the second generation Dodge transmission mount, but basically what I did is I put angle iron on the top of the frame where the original mount was, and then I put angle iron on the bottom of the frame where the new mount is now going at. 3/8 plate tying the two angle irons together, C channel on the bottom, and then that's the new cross member. The second generation Dodge mount doesn't work. A cross member doesn't work because the second gen Dodge frame is tubular, and the cross member ears are flared outwards, so that you would have to install it and remove it using a porta power. But since this is an open-ended frame, this frame ain't designed to be stretched like that. So I figured the easiest thing to do, which also clears the exhaust, pretty straightforward, is just C channel going across, 3/8 plate bolted to angle iron. That's bolted to the frame, and it's pretty darn simple. And it actually doesn't drop below the frame too much, so there's plenty of clearance. That's where we're at. Also, for the exhaust hanger, I did have to lengthen it a little bit, where it bolts onto the transmission. I just lengthened it like 1/2 inch or so, just so it would reach. But I just cut the flange off and extended it by 1/2 inch, and then that's where it is. But that's the original first gen Dodge exhaust mount, just lengthened. Now, when you're doing this, before you pull the getrag out, you need to know what the angles are. But an easier reference to find out what the angles are, because I have a gear vendor on here, I'm going with a single piece drive shaft. But if you just went with just a 6-speed transmission with no gear vendor on it, you'd probably still have to have a 2-piece drive shaft with a front one that's just really short. But this is where the center support bearing went, and it was oriented this way, right? So what you would do is, with this up here, you put an angle finder like that, like so, and you find out what the angle is. Now this pitch is what the output, or what the transmission needs to be pointed at. All right. So when you're making this cross member, you have to make the height of the transmission where the angle is right. And I just put the angle finder on here because this flange right here is parallel to the input and output shaft of this transmission. Now, one problem that I ran into, because this transmission is so much bigger than the getrag, is the floor didn't offer enough clearance. There's plenty of videos of people telling you that you have to flatten out the body seam, the body seam where the floor pan and the firewall come together, so for clearance for the bell housing adapter. That is true. I flattened it out with an air hammer. Pretty simple. But when I was jacking the transmission up in an effort to get the angle correct, it was hitting the floor. And I'll show you what I've been doing. So this is where the transmission moved to. Getrag was up there. I'm in the process of plating over the existing hole, riveting it, sealing it. But I just measured down where the new hole went, used a hole saw, put it on there, and then I used the air grinder to cut the square notches where I need it to. I'm reusing the old first gen boot setup, and this has those 2 notches, so be sure to notch this corner and the other corner if you're using the same cover. But I had to cut this hole in the floorboard to accommodate the transmission. Also, these nv5600s, they have the casting tab right here, which is a non-functional tab. That's just where they poured the casting. But that stuck up like, 2.5 inches. So I just cut that off for clearance. And then also, this, it doesn't look like it, but this needs to point a little bit more downwards. And I bent this more upwards rather than it being as flat as it was. But I'm going to rivet a new piece on there. I use this pneumatic flange tool you can get out at Harbor Freight, and I flanged all the way around it, as well as flanging the new piece of tin that I'm going to be riveting in place. In addition to it sitting flat as a result of flanging it, it also increases the strength, because when you cut a big hole in the floor that's like that, and then you're just going to put a piece of tin on it, that takes away structural integrity and support from the floor. Before I flanged both pieces, I could push on the floor and you could see it pulling down pretty hard over the tunnel, because the tunnel is as strong as it was before. But now when you apply that flange around to it, it stiffens it up. Plus, when I rivet back on there, it'll stiff it up some more. So that's what I had to do. Just cut the tab off, cut that out, take a pry bar, bend those up, flange it out, plate it, and then move on. But yeah, that's where I'm at right now. After I finish this piece of the tunnel, the carpet's going to go back down. I'll work on installing the shifter. I still need to install or bolt on the slave cylinder for the clutch. I think the original one off the getrag bolts right in. I think it's the same as the 2nd gen. And then in addition to that, wiring, I have a new drive shaft being made with the gear vendor. I'm going with a single piece drive shaft that's 69.5 inches long. So that's what it is. Alright, that's that piece riveted in. Got it nice and molded to the floor. In terms of shaping it, there's nothing I could really advise you other than just keep trying. I think that's some roofing tin, so pretty cheap at the hardware store. Just cut it with some tin snips, bang on it a lot, just keep trimming it up till it fits. But got it all riveted in there. When I was riveting it in there, I started on this side, started riveting up, and then I lined up the other side and pushed it in and riveted it, and then there was a gap in the middle. So what I did was I went underneath, and with the porta power and this separator jaw, I just pushed on the floor, between the floor and the transmission, gingerly. You don't want to crack anything, and push the floor upwards until the floor meted my new plate. Pop the rivets in the center, and then now the floor is held upwards, up and away from the transmission, and it's solid. This thing is solid. So the next thing you do is just clean up that mess a little bit more, get this all sealed up and keep on going.